It's Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs. Let's start the show with Lewis Tennant. Here we go. Guests and interviews that you're looking for with creators, innovators, and so much more. For all episodes and further info, verbalhighs.com is the place to go.
All right, welcome to Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs, a podcasted from a kitchen bench in Kingsland, Auckland, New Zealand. Here I stand. Got a pinball machine. I bought, for the first time in my life, I have enough money saved where I'm nowhere near a house deposit, but I am realistically could be in house deposit territory. So to go and buy a 2016 Ghostbusters by the biggest pinball company in the world currently. There's been a big pinball revival in the last decade or so, and Stern is sort of at the head of it. To go and buy a 2016 model, principally because I'm not much of a tinkerer, and although I'd love a cool 90s or late 80s machine, I figured if I spent a bit more money, I'd get a much more modern setup, all run by computers and that. A large chunk of change. I justified it to myself. They're quite interesting things in that the majority of them don't depreciate now. In the early 2000s, people thought pinball was dead. People bought titles for $800-900 that are worth thousands now. Ain't no joke. Analogous to old school studio equipment for you musical boffins out there. That ain't going to happen with this, but what is good is when I can, if it ever happens, if the Auckland housing market and banking system ever lets me in, I looked at how long a mortgage would take to pay off, and coupling up is actually strategic as much as a love thing these days. How horrifying. I think it was something like they wanted $800 out of me for 30 years, which wouldn't leave me much, to be honest. It would leave me far less spending money by a long shot than I have at the moment. Where am I going with this? Back to the pinball. Anyway, so I justified it by the fact that I'll flick it on off after giving it a good play for at least hopefully a year. But it involved lots of moving. The aesthete in me isn't quite as happy with the look of the machine in my little whare as how the records looked. But the records had to go somewhere, so they're in the hallway, and we'll figure out how to zhuzh up the pinball corner. Haven't quite figured out what else to put there yet. But man, what a bit of shuffling. The point of this story is a big red button story. Many years ago, a good friend who was in, or still is, much more than in IT, very high up in Apple now actually, in Australia, yes, was responsible, the way he told the story, for the IT in a very large building in Melbourne CBD. This is about 15 years ago now, I think about it. And amongst all the plant or equipment, or backstage wires and knobs and whistles, there was a big red button that said, "Don't press me," or something similar. So if you can imagine, you're in on weekend shift, and that sign would taunt you, wouldn't it? Don't press this. Don't press this. By all means, don't press this, or whatever it was. My compadre pressed it, and the whole building went down one way or another, whether it was just IT systems or electricity and everything. I can't quite remember, paraphrasing and not so well version of a story someone else told. But effectively, the who would have come in? I can't remember. It's 15 years ago, folks. Whoever it was anyway. A bunch of people with pencils behind their ears and toolboxes and things that read and calibrate stuff came in. Didn't say much to him all the way through. He played it cool. After a very long period of time, building was up and running again. And as a last word, as they left to leave said friend to finish his shift, one of them very deadpan said, "Don't press the red button again." So how does that relate to pinball? Well, I moved the chorus box, the fuel of life these days, the box that brings the internet into the home. Well, I didn't move it. I considered moving it. I gave it one little yank on the wall, and I went, all those wires seem a bit fragile. Then the internet was down later in the day. Then I called them, had no idea why the internet had gone off, and the gentleman came round today, the chorus gentleman, and similarly, he didn't say at the end of it all, not charging for the repair and so on. Didn't say at the end of it, don't press the red button, or, the analogous version of that. But he said it with his eyes. Shouts to Hallertau. Forgot to do that the last couple, I think, but shouts to Dave from Hallertau, shouts to their number 2 beer, which is typically the one that arrives lately. Delicious beverages, enjoyed Nada in support of the podcast. He calls it his subscription. I like how Hallertau support a whole lot of stuff like this around and about the town. To my guest, as I said, thanks to Andrew Spraggon from Solar Rosa for coming in. A one-man army of an independent music artist has survived over 20 years. Now, I didn't know a lot about Andrew before he came on over. I didn't know what I'd get out of him, what he'd want to talk about. I always let the guests go as deep as they want to go. And the word I thought of when he left was candor. I appreciated his... it's a very honest podcast covering mental health in the music industry, being ripped off in the music industry, but also some really positive stuff as well. We end up on things like sharing our interest in cooking, and now we've PM'd each other a couple of recipes. Like the show, Verbal Highs podcast on Facebook, Verbal Highs on Twitter, and if we can get some more comments and 5-star ratings on iTunes, that'd be lovely too. I just realised I talked about all the boring machinations and financial decision-making and internet-breaking side of having a pinball in my home. I've got a freaking pinball in my home. All right, here's Andrew, folks.
This is Dr. Janet's Verbal Highs.
And that's probably them playing tunes. Yeah. So, I mean, we could have done that. This one is sort of a long conversation, and people say interview, and I go, no, it's not an interview. It's a conversation. Meaning that...
the best interviews are conversations.
That's right. You got it. See, I told you you'd be a natural. Yeah, so they generally go for about 80 minutes. But we'll sort of loosely base it on, obviously, you and the band.
Yep.
How's that coffee?
Good.
Yeah. And that's a positive reaction.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Fussy with.
So we were talking about and just remember to look. Just keep sort of vaguely in the.
Yep.
Oh, that's beautiful. You've used one of those before.
I have. Yep.
Oh, that timber is sensational.
Yeah.
And you're not even popping. So
Good.
speaking of technology, I was thoughts you have alone. For some reason, thinking this morning, I don't remember when I sent my first email. Do you remember when you sent your first email?
No. No.
Do you remember?
I do remember. My first modem and signing up to Hotmail and all that stuff.
So Hotmail would be 98-ish. You probably signed up 99.
Yeah, something like that. It was just just the start of kind of doing Solar Rosa stuff, and it was I totally jumped in to the internet. It was
threw the fax machine out the window.
Even though it was so painful.
Threw the fax machine out the window.
Yeah, I think I kept the fax machine for a little while, but just the pages loading like that and stuff. But
that's
I could see the benefits of it.
Yeah. And you go, I want to download that image, and so you click it and you go to bed, you get up in the morning.
Yeah.
The image is ready.
Pretty much.
No one can call you for that 8 hours because the modem's plugged in.
Yeah, but I mean, even like just the technology. So, because the first Solar Rosa EP, I pressed up one CD at a time and sold it, sale or return to stores.
Were you burning it in real time?
Yeah. So I'd sit there all night just burning CDs.
Not thinking about the hourly rate.
Nah.
Oh, that's awesome. How did they go? How did you... So had you already been out playing, and was the Solar Rosa kind of known? Or
No.
The music shop guy was just pimping people to the...
No, what happened was, I was in bands for years, and I was in a band called Cicada that was kind of, for 6 years, that was, making indie guitar music, really.
Yeah. Playlisted on the B-net, I remember.
Yeah. And I was into indie guitar music, but then sort of toward, sort of mid to late 80s, my musical taste started sort of heading more, into, things like Public Enemy and through that, discovering Funkadelic and Parliament and things like that. And it was, Ninja Tune and Mowax and...
That's skipping forward about 10 years. So that
David Holmes and whatnot.
Cicada would have been between discovering things like Public Enemy and then discovering things like all that trip-hop stuff in the late
so like
90s.
Early 90s.
Oh, God, it was the early mid-90s. I'm feeling old, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of those Dope on Plastic sort of style compilations of that whole middle shelf. There's...
Well, Dope on Plastic
was
was a game changer for me.
Yeah.
That was like... I can cuss on this, I guess, right?
Absolutely.
It's like, fuck, I don't want to be doing this guitar music anymore. This is where my head's at. So I was overseas, went on my second kind of OE to Mexico and the States and stuff, and decided that I would come home and quit the band and buy a little studio set up.
Yeah.
And just see what happened, really. And there was no plan to do anything specific, and I just started making music, and then out of that I thought I had 4 tunes that were good enough to press up, so I pressed up 50 copies, just numbered them 1 to 50 and shopped them around to a couple of small indie stores, and they sold out really quickly.
That's coming back to what we were talking about at the beginning. So how did people know to buy them? Was it the classic record shop guy goes, oh, this is local, it's good?
I guess the record shop guy just put it on or would recommend it to people.
And so what about artwork and stuff? Were you hand drawing them and all that sort of thing?
First one, the 50 copies, I got a photograph from somewhere. I can't even remember where I got it from.
Yeah. You downloaded it on dial-up overnight.
No, it was an actual physical photograph that was reprinted and so yeah. But then after that, my brother designed the artwork for the EP, and so after the 50 copies, it had a different cover.
Oh wow!
And I still press them up one at a time.
Have you ever seen any of the first 50 pop up anywhere?
No,
you're at someone's house. You're looking at the CD.
No, but a fan emailed me the other day and said that he really wanted a copy of it. On, just digital copy.
Yeah.
And so I personally I try to forget it, because it's like it's amateur hour, So I had to go back and listen to it for the first time in nearly 20 years.
Wow!
And me and my partner had a good laugh, but
what's that? You being the creator, you hear all the holes in it now, do you?
I just hear a guy starting out, just. But I can. There's a charm to it, but yeah. And I know the funny thing is because I hate going back and listening to stuff because you do pick things apart, but
yeah.
But when you've had that much time in between something, you can kind of look at it without being so objective and subjective and so I just heard a young kid kind of making music. Well, not that young, but yeah.
When you said that to the band, because I remember those days well, because my thing was I sort of sold the guitar and brought turntables and started buying records, but I also hustled from quite early, so I started getting gigs and stuff and all the rest of it. And there was still, with the less open-minded people in the general music community, a bit of a sometimes, what, eh? Like, so was anyone in the band or around you like, oh, you're changing your spots, you're changing your, like, why are you doing that? Or was it, you know what I mean about that sort of, like, now it's kind of like everything's a big mashup, but, it was kind of like... Yeah.
You'd have to ask them, I think. Yeah, I know that one.
Oh, actually, we've just opened that door. Then we've got them here.
Andrew Spraggon, this is your life. Yeah, no, I mean the bass player was always into similar kind of stuff to a degree that I was into, and but no, I don't think so. I think that they spent enough time with me to see that my music taste was changing.
And so technology-wise, we won't get too boffin-y, but there's always boffins listening, and I'm a boffin at heart.
I love Gear Talk.
Yeah. what did you actually listen to something before about you regrettably selling your Junos and so on?
Oh,
no,
yeah.
I was like, no.
Yeah.
But so what did you start out? So we're at I love carbon dating things. So that first EP came out
99.
What what was the full setup to put that together?
I had a DAW called Cakewalk.
Yep.
And I had a little MIDI keyboard, and I invested, like, at the time it was a lot of money. Like I bought a Mac, like a beige Mac, desktop Mac, and I think that cost me about $6,000 or something. And an Akai 3000 XL sampler, which was also about $5,000 or something. So I was, you know,
you were in there. In there.
I was in the hole for a few years. Yeah.
Do you think there's something? I don't like that kind of back in my day, but do you think there's something in that in terms of enforcing that commitment? Like, I love how everything's so accessible now, but you know what I mean. Like, do you think there's something in enforcing that commitment through that investment?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
But I'd never had, like I say, it was never like, right, this is what I'm doing now, and I'm going to make music and I'm going to sell it. I think I was so used to disappointment that I didn't have any expectations. Well, because I was the guy that would go to record labels and try and get Cicada signed and all that kind of stuff, and I'd had so many kind of like disappointing meetings, and by the time Solar Rosa came around, I was actually quite cynical about the whole industry, and that's why when I put it out, the EP, I never expected it to sell, and when it did, it was kind of like, oh, okay. So there was no real plan to like spend all this money, invest in this gear, and make money back from it. It was just, and the interesting thing is, I didn't really think about it until like maybe 5 years into Solar Rosa that I was like a studio, producer guy when I was a kid. It was like. Yeah. Had my first 4-track at like 15 or something. Wow. And
the old Fostex
drum machine.
Yeah,
I think it was a Fostex, maybe a Tascam.
Yeah,
I had a couple of them, and an Akai Professional later on. And but and I had my synths, and I had drum machines, and I'd play some guitar, and and I'd put it all down on a bounce tracks down, so without realizing it, that was kind of my instrument from earlier on.
I've had that in my life where different things I've done. At the time I've gone, how do I put it? This is completely new, or this is something new I'm doing, and then you kind of join the dots together in a more introspective moment. You go, that actually links to that, that I've done in the past. You're saying you're knocked back from all those record labels. You can look back now and you've actually lasted longer than all those record labels. So there you go. Record labels, Yeah, that's right. I think last time I was around near, is it Universal that used to be up on Benediction Street? One of those. Was it Universal or Sony that used to be up there?
I'm not sure.
Benediction up in Newton Gully?
Oh, yeah.
Last time there, I think someone came down the cafe I was working in and said they were thinking about moving into limited edition shoes, which I thought was interesting. That was about 10 years ago. Hey, I better introduce you because we're over 10 minutes in. If you haven't guessed already, my guest is from, and it was essentially the man behind Solar Rosa, Andrew Spraggon. Also started out with Cicada, as you mentioned, and I think you played for Dimmer for a little while.
Yeah.
Which we can talk about if we get there. And essentially is not just the kind of beat maker and programmer, but you're the all-over organizer and manager and motivator and CEO and limited company. Solar Rosa, aren't you?
Pretty much, yeah.
Have you always, because when I looked at that today, I don't like to over-research people coming in, but what struck me is, you seem really organised, which is dear to my heart, but also around that, it's that one-man operation thing. Is that just been a necessity thing, or is it a control thing, or why have you never reached out and had management? Or
I have.
You have, yeah.
It's a bit of both. I've never really talked about this, not publicly, but
that's what these are for.
Yeah, so of course, once Solar Rosa started taking off, it was like there was always the search for management,
Yeah.
And there were a couple of people that put their hand up to sort of help, but never really did much. So not what I'd consider proper management. And it wasn't until Get It Together that we got our first kind of proper manager. And I mean, it was our most successful album to date, and it was just
tumultuous times.
It was. It started out good, and then it sort of got to the point where it was like, well, your vision for where this needs to go, where it should go, is different to mine, and instead of coming together on that, we just sort of clashed, and so the relationship fell apart really, and also there was a lot of financial trouble, like a big album but not really making any money off it, and
is that because money went somewhere that you weren't aware it was going?
Pretty much,
right?
Yeah, money was being spent without my consent, and relentless touring and turning up to shows and sort of going, why are there 3 people on lights, and why is there all this and why is there all that, and
right. So not only if anything untoward was happening, you felt like there was a whole lot of money unnecessarily being spent through stupid decisions.
Yeah, which I would find out about once I got the bill.
Oh God. You still got all your hair.
Yeah, and so. And that caused all sorts of problems within the band and whatnot, and also ended up in a legal battle with the manager at the time, and which sort of led to massive amount of debt, and
so you didn't come out of the legal battle too well.
No. It all came down to the contract, which I'd never signed. But it was a negotiation, and that's how it was looked at, and so I had to pay him out, and without getting too heavy, through that came depression.
Yeah, I could see all of that, absolutely,
and pretty heavy depression, and then we kind of that leads on to the next album, lo and behold, and that.
Which was that 2009? No, 2000.
2012. No,
2012. 2012. So Get It Together was 2009.
Or 2011 maybe. No, hang on, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, must have been 11.
The one after Get It Together, Lo and Behold, High and Beyond.
Get It Together was 2009. I think it was about 3 years later.
So I know. Okay. Yeah. So that led to that album,
and we got new management.
Yeah.
And the international touring continued, and the relentless kind of touring, and through that time, I also had problems with my arm, and had to get some major surgery, and was advised to sort of take 6 months off from any touring, but kind of said to the surgeon, we've got all this stuff that's planned and all these shows overseas, and how long do I need to actually really...
You weren't in an industry that stops...
No, and I didn't have management at the time that was like, you know what, you need to take the time, or anything like that. And so the machine was kind of, unstoppable as it still is. But at that time, you throw in a lot of international touring and stuff. And I took 3 months off and went back on the road. And after a year, the arm hadn't healed. So they had to go back and do the operation a second time. And talking major surgery, they had to shorten my ulnar bone, and
is it giving you physical pain all through the tour?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
man.
apart from still having depression and anxiety the whole time through it, I had major sort of problems with prescription.
I was going to say, are they medicating you on opiates at the same time
opiates,
as well?
Tramadol, morphine, codeine.
Yeah, bottles and bottles.
Yep. And so I was kind of out of my head, and just kind of, I was like, management knows what they're doing, so I'll just leave them to it. And
were you looking after the rest of yourself on tour, like sleeping and eating and...
No, not really.
Partying as well?
Well, yeah, probably, but I never really kind of was a massive partier on tour.
Well, I'm just meaning...
I learned from earlier on from some really bad shows that it actually... doesn't really pay to party on tour, like until the end of the tour, maybe.
No, I'm just painting a picture of, because I've been listening to a lot of Tom Larkin from Shehad. He's involved with mental health for the music industry at the moment. He's become an advocate.
Yeah.
So I was just painting a wider picture of an already quite potentially unhealthy situation for a lot of musicians, let alone all the other stuff you were going through.
Yep.
So you got through, and you're on that tour, and you're saying it's still giving you pain. You're supposed to rest up. You didn't rest up.
Yep.
And then you were getting to what happened after that?
So I had the surgery again, and then that time I took the time to let it recover. And they took a bone graft from my hip and everything. They had to put a massive plate in my arm, and the surgeon was like, "You can't have this a third time." So it was all fixed, and then I had to have the surgery a year later to get the plate removed. So basically 4 years of surgery, more or less.
Wow.
4 years of the whole period of that was 4 years. And there were band members left, and there was some heavy shit went down, and generally over money, because people wanted more money, because they kind of looked at it as like, this is a successful thing, but the whole time I'd just been dealing with massive debt, and to be honest, I've only just got out of that debt hole, and this is like 4 years from. Well, if you count from when the debt started, it was around 2010. So I've just finished paying it off now.
Wow, but you've managed to be raising a family, and so
I don't know how I really did it, to be honest. Even my accountant kind of says to me, I don't really know how you've done it.
Yeah. That's incredible. And the people that sort of left and so on, I mean, I know I don't want to sort of have you sort of have you dwell on other things you've dealt with enough, but do you feel like they understood what was going on?
No.
Or did you relay to them what was going on and so on? Okay. I'm really sorry to hear that, man. It's full on. And so did you think about walking away from music during some of that?
Heaps of times, yeah.
Yeah. And so what's kept that flame going? Is it the sort of it's the I guess it's the being creative, right?
Well, I always came back to that conversation of like, well, what else am I going to do? And which I had with my partner a lot. It's like, what am I going to do? And I thought about going back to tertiary education or something like that. I really enjoyed being creative with my hands, so wood sort of skills and stuff like that. But
wood skills, that's a random addition there.
Yeah, well, carpentry and joinery and cabinet making and stuff.
Yeah,
cool.
I
did a year-long course in my 20s and thought, this is, if I had done this earlier in life, I probably would have done this.
But now that, I mean, through all of those, I mean, you've just talked about the most extreme ends of what you've faced, but where you're at now, you must still be enjoying creating music and keeping the juggernaut rolling.
Well, that's what it comes down to. You kind of... it sounds dark and heavy, and it was dark and heavy. And, I'm still dealing with depression and anxiety off and on, but it's not as bad as it was. Amazing. Once I got out of the debt, it was like this massive burden lifted, and I'm still on medication and stuff like that. But, it came down to like, I'd sort of go down to the studio and have a really great few days or whatever, and you're kind of like, this is why I do this.
So if that lifts all of that, it's so weird, isn't it? I hear you, like the thing that most moves you and sort of keeps you on the level is also intrinsically tied in with your kind of career and your obligations. It's an interesting mix.
Yeah. I mean, it's
it needs to be.
I don't think there's a lot of real talk about it, like, and I've kind of brought this up with the Music Commission, like, maybe there needs to be some, like an AA meeting almost, but where musicians get together, artists, and talk about real shit that's going on with them, and making music and living their lives, because it's. I know there's a lot of people out there that in similar situations, but you're not really meant to talk about that stuff. And nobody wants to. When you're doing your press rounds for your EP release or your album or whatever, you don't really.
Well, that's why I like, dude. We've got to get you. Part of my mental health regime is actually listening to long podcasts, because you get people. And it's a part of a wider phenomena, I think, that, since, I don't know how old you are, but in my lifetime it's radically changed what people do and don't talk about, even outside of the music industry.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean, a problem shared, all these cliches, like a problem shared is a problem halved. And
I mean, I know there's a big...
And so I was going to say, I think with the way you're working as well, outside of being in the music industry, creative, you're also... I face this with parts of academia, which I've fallen into, is that solitary work mode is not good sometimes.
No, it's not. No.
I can sit... My job is results based, so I can be anywhere in the world providing it gets done.
Yeah.
I don't walk into a crowded room of people every day as my workplace. So there's a whole lot of that. Did you go to the? Because now you've talked about all of this. Did you go to that music forum a week or two ago? They had a whole panel on mental health in the music industry.
I saw it, but no, I didn't. No.
Oh, I thought that's what were you saying? Where were you talking to the music? You said you were talking to.
The Music Commission, because the Music Commission have helped me out. They've got, they've helped me out with therapy and,
Oh, that's great.
And whatnot, So I've called them in sort of moments of crisis.
I didn't even know they offered that. See, I think they wouldn't have done that 15 years ago.
No, it's a new thing, but, there's a hotline you can call, and then they put you in touch with they give you some free counselling and stuff like that. So, props to them. It's it's a weird. I mean, we could talk for hours on mental health. That's
what I'm meaning. I think that to varying levels, it's part of the human condition. Especially the modern world, money, all that stuff.
That's my whole point. Is that I don't
people double crossing you. You're not. I say you're not unique, because that sounds really dismissive. Because everything you've talked about is really, really awful. And I really feel for you. But so I don't mean you're not unique like that. But I'm meaning that once you hear a lot of people's stories, you realise that people face a lot, eh?
Yeah.
It's a curious one. Another thing that struck me when you were talking about this is, have you sort of followed the opioid crisis in the States?
Yeah.
Just sort of, what do you think about sort of that side of it? Do you think people get over medicated, or did you, were you given what you needed at the time for the pain, or did it just create another?
Well,
do you feel like you ended up with sort of a bit of a habit at the end of it, or?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I needed the medication.
Yeah.
But then there would be times where it'd be like, I'm exhausted from, not having enough sleep and being on the road or whatever, and this little pill just kind of like
lie on a big fluffy green cloud for a while.
Or it just takes the edge off and allows you to do your thing and carry on, and you fall into a bit of a trap with that. So yeah, I mean, it's an easy trap to fall into.
Well, absolutely, because it's on tap. It's not like you don't have to go through a lot of dilemma or nefarious means.
You can also function. You're not. There's nothing super dodgy about it as far as like you're not ducking off into rooms.
But it's also meaning you don't have to go down to a gang pad or whatever. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
We live in an interesting world. All that stuff I've read in the States about the industrial side of that, the capitalist side of that. Like, we've got a lot of our systems wrong at the moment, man, in a lot of ways, with things like that. I was going to move back a little to childhood days, because a couple of things I read today, you were bigging up the influence of your brothers a lot. I took it like you're the classic younger brother?
Yeah.
Yeah. How many of you guys?
There's three of us, yeah.
Do you know that one of your brothers is one of the biggest fans of my podcast and has listened to every single episode?
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that Craig?
Yeah.
Grapple, yeah.
Yeah. So where's he in the lineup?
Basically, my oldest brother Mark, he was, he was the first guy to kind of really bring music into the home. I mean, of course, my dad had his yacht rock collection.
Yeah. Steely Dan.
No.
Supertramp.
Supertramp, Fleetwood Mac. Big, massive Doobie Brothers fan.
I should have kept all those records. I regret selling them. When I decided I was a cool dance DJ, I sold all my great relatives' records.
Yeah,
anyway.
funnily enough, like, I'm just never really a massive fan of the Doobie. In fact, I kind of hated the Doobie Brothers. But my first musical experience of remembering being blown away by an album.
I wasn't meaning the Doobie Brothers. I was just meaning those records in general. But anyway,
was Supertramp. I remember like listening to my dad's Supertramp album, and
they're an amazing band.
That was my first kind of like, oh my god, musical experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, apart from him, my brother Mark sort of brought into the house.
This is the oldest brother.
Yeah.
So how many years between you and Mark? 10, 5, 2?
No, I think it's about 7 or 8.
7, yeah, okay. So he brought first music into the house. That wasn't Dad's yacht rock. Yes.
No, which was kind of like lots of, post-punk stuff and B-52s and Devo and stuff like that. So
wow,
that was
new wavy kind of electronic-y 80s-y.
Yeah. But on the sort of better end of the spectrum, then the brother Craig that you're talking about, he sort of brought in more punk, post-punk, later on sort of reggae, hip-hop, massive reggae head.
And so he's how much older than you?
But he was into everything.
2 or 3 years older than you? 4 years older than you?
No, he's only 1.5 years older than me, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So there was a gap there with the folks, and then... Anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, but both of them, still are massively into music, and so the 80s was kind of when I really started getting into music, and my first sort of big album was probably from memory was probably like Adam and the Ants or something like that, and then I got into I was a massive Depeche Mode fan and
nice
and all that 80s kind of synth pop stuff.
So you must be a little bit older than me. I'm 42.
I'm 48. No, I'm 47. What are we in?
I was just saying,
I'm 47. I always jump.
You know what else? You and I just did 2019.
I always jump a year ahead.
I'm 41. Yeah, I'm 41. Okay. You know what I was going to say? I was going to say I don't have the data to support this, but then I actually realised, awesomely, I do have the data to support this because I did a PhD and talked to a lot of people about a music topic.
Yeah.
But what I found in these focus groups was a bunch of younger siblings who'd gone on to take on music as a career, but it often seemed to start with these two older siblings who eventually kind of drifted off, still had a love of music.
Right.
So I've just found another one in you, the guy that sort of takes it and runs with it.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Clutches that ball.
Yeah.
And takes it further than everyone else, essentially.
Yeah, well, they say,
older relatives, really significant.
Yeah, they are.
There's other stuff, you see them with
they say that the third child
is
dress
and
they say that the third child is kind of a bit more of a risk taker or whatever. So I'm not I'm not sure if I'm a risk taker, but I guess you've kind of I've always looked up to my older brothers as a massive sort of musical influence, and
so where's the oldest now? Still in New Zealand?
Yeah,
in Auckland?
No, Te Araha.
And Craig's an Aussie somewhere, right? Sydney?
In Sydney, yeah.
What took him over there? I've never met him. A Facebook friend. But
right.
It's just, he's really into the podcast. It's really cool.
Yeah, cool.
He actually donated a little bit of money and stuff as well.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So he just took like a lot of people just decided to try Aussie and stayed there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
So you're not from Auckland. You guys grew up in Te
Yeah, no, we're from Auckland, yeah. From Howick. I was born in Howick.
I'm not an Aucklander. I've only been here 10 years. So how was Howick different then to Howick now?
I have no idea. Once I got out, I never kind of went back.
You haven't played the Howick Tavern since you...
No.
Well, you say that like you wanted to get the fuck out of there.
I did, yeah.
Why is that? What was wrong with
I
Howick?
think it was one of those places that was good to grow up as a kid. But as a teenager, I spent my whole youth like running around as a teenage goth trying to like avoid getting beaten up,
Weren't you and Chris Chetland the two goths running around your school?
It wasn't just me and Chris Chetland.
My world's only guests on
There
my
was
podcast.
There was a flock of about, a dozen of us.
I love that as a collective noun, man.
For goths.
A flock of goths.
Yeah.
And you both moved totally into the world of electronica. So were you and Chris mates?
Yeah, we were, yeah.
Still see him now? I mean, it's a long time ago.
From time to time, not that, sort of the odd occasion, when we bump into each other at some industry event or whatever. I bumped into him recently at a gig. He was performing, or his partner was performing, and I was DJing, and it was like we just kick off on that conversation,
I like that. People it doesn't matter how long you haven't seen them. It's like you just slot back in. It's a sign of a kindred spirit.
Yeah.
I had him in here and he was so mellow he was almost levitating.
Right.
Yeah. And we talked...
He's very zen.
Yeah, we talked some quite complex... Physics is his bag? Yeah. So I think I kept up and understood what it is that he is still studying. But it's quite... It's quite cognitively...
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we all have our different specialties of what we're sort of our interest and stuff, but it's just a different style of intellectual output than I'm used to engaging in. It was an interesting conversation.
We just talk about kind of music. Yeah.
He forced it that way. I just wanted to talk about cog transmissions,
right?
And rock and roll for the last 20 years,
right?
So with that most successful album, what in the sort of trajectory? Well, I'm trying to think of that term. It's like another cliche. Like we're all the, what was the catalyst, or what was it that made that album the most successful of all of them? Do you know what I mean? Like what? Yeah, what was in the air around then?
I think anyone that's had a successful album kind of is always thinking, after that, with every release, what was the secret? What was the key ingredients to
point of career? Where New Zealand music was at the time? Your point of your production, the tunes.
Yeah, I mean, I think like a big thing for me was that I was. It was pre-having kids.
Yeah.
Was fairly free in that regard. Was DJing a lot. Had a radio show on KFM and Bass FM. Maybe that was after that album. But I was DJing a lot, so I was kind of in that headspace of what works for DJing, what works for a party,
totally,
and
fully immersed in yeah.
So I think maybe that was was part of the part of the ingredients for that. What made that album what it was, but and some of it's just luck.
Yep.
Like some of the collaborations were just really good. I mean, both sort of the biggest tracks of Eva Lamkin and Turnaround and Biker Humanize. The Eva Lamkin track was literally, I think, in the last kind of month or two before finishing the album, was like my publicist sent me, she knew I was looking for people to collaborate with, and she said, this woman from Wellington, Eva Lamkin, what do you think? Sent me like a MySpace page or something like that, or a track. And I was literally like, yeah, cool, send her the track, and it all sort of fell into place. And Biker just did it remotely in Germany and sent it back, and it was great. I didn't need to do anything to it, so just sort of luck in that regard.
Don't know. You're giving yourself enough credit. It must be more than luck. You said it was also where you were music-wise.
Well, I mean, their performances and their what they recorded was really great. I did have to with Eva. I think it was kind of like, okay, I really like it, but there's kind of no chorus there, so we need to come up with the chorus.
Yeah.
But Biker, literally, I didn't have to give her any direction at all. She turned out to be a total nightmare after that.
What struck me when I've seen you guys is, I don't know why I draw a comparison with The Prodigy. Wait for me. I'm sure because heaps of other bands have done it, is it struck me that you are, we just talked about the sort of lone producer, beat maker, of which there are many these days, but you have had the, good idea to assemble a really great live show around that. I mean, that's how I relate it to The Prodigy, because essentially Liam had 3 people jumping around on stage and him.
Yeah.
Yours is obviously, your members are more classically musical. So for you, talking about sort of highs and lows, are you someone who feels really great when you're on stage?
No.
So you've always had sort of front people and stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
But you enjoy the performance in hindsight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not always. No. For me, and I've only really learnt this in the last kind of few years, is that it's all about on-stage sound. So the best gig I've done recently was in Perth.
For monitoring, you mean?
Yeah, and we got everything we wanted on stage.
Yeah.
And, even though we had a 15-minute line check, so no sound check, just 15 minutes to get your band, sounding good and
Festival
ready.
or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The team was so amazing. The monitor engineer was so amazing that and I had a massive sub behind me, and everything was, all the boxes were ticked, and and then I can have a really great show. But if it sounds bad and I can't feel the drummer and I can't hear the bass player or whatever,
a little bit of delay from one thing, that's the worst.
It's just I can't fake funk.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? So I find that really hard. I know a lot of other players in the band just kind of just get on with it.
That's why you can see why crews like Freddy's and stuff who've got that large reach now don't fuck about, and they take someone with them, don't they?
All the big acts, you take your own monitor engineer and take your own sound engineer. And
my God, I was watching this. Do you remember that? I don't know if you remember this, but it was Whizzer and Chips or something during the original rave days. There was a character that used to, if an alarm went off, he'd just start raving in the middle of the day. It was called Ravey Davey or something.
Oh, right, I remember that.
I was looking. God, YouTube. There was. If people don't get where that came from, at least for us, there was a very audible alarm outside that construction site when the crane's going, and they're illegally allowed to start from 7.
Oh God!
He has to beep a car horn sounding thing every time it, moves or drops or picks up.
Mate.
So from about 7, and that's going to be a high rise, so you can imagine how long this has been going on.
We've had behind us, there's this is probably boring for listeners.
No,
we've got infill housing.
It's real life, baby.
Yeah, I think there's about 4 houses being built, and they started, I think it was about September last year, and they still don't look like they're anywhere near completion, and it's like our whole house has been shaking. We've had flooding and all sorts of crap from that, so I feel your pain.
No, I felt your pain when I saw the funny thing. So here's a funny one, because I don't know exactly what my rights are here in terms of, I think this building's technically commercial, so it's different with when you can and can't start doing stuff,
right,
hours wise. But then the other one is, bless her, this so folks, we're looking at a shipping container that's been, you probably can't see that, there's a big blue shipping container right where I'm looking, right here. So that got dropped in because the woman decided to start a wee cafe in there. She has good coffee and stuff. But you know what a knockbox is for coffee making? You know, the thing that you empty the group handle?
Well, that's how I think I got my arm injury.
Oh, were you a barista for years?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Anyway, she freshens the machine in the morning, when you put your first set of shots in the elements.
Yep.
And that thing sonically somehow sends the sound of the
reverbs off that, doesn't it?
Straight
right
into here. So that's been another one. She freshens up that puppy about 20 to 7 in the morning.
Oh, God.
Monday to Saturday. Modern living. So back to stage and, good monitoring and crews and stuff. I was on YouTube and I probably started off looking for something 10 topics away, and I ended up watching a video on Metallica's crew. Just looking at what a band like that has backstage, crew member wise, and what they're assigned to. I was fascinated by one of the guitarists' guitar tech.
Yeah.
He was just talking about everything they've got. They've got just just everything is thought of. And I'd never thought about that with those big artists. You probably have, being a stage guy, but none of them control any of their pedals. Like the tech behind knows where all the effects changes take place.
Yeah.
So the only pedal that Kirk has on stage is the wah-wah.
Right.
And then all the rest is done backstage by the tech.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Right. You think about that when you see them on stage. They're running around.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah,
it does. It makes sense. I mean, yeah.
And then the change like, and now this is Wi-Fi, and now we send this through the Ethernet, and then I'm just going, my God.
Yeah.
You know? That's amazing.
It's pretty crazy, but I mean, you know, coming back to just the monitor engineer, you know, I mean, that's the problem that I have all the time is that, you know, we turn up to do, and because a lot of what we do is festivals. Yeah. So you get a line check, you know, you've got 20 minutes to sound good on stage, and then you're on. And if the monitor engineer doesn't know, even though we've got this big writer with like Andrew needs this, and this, and Chris needs this, and this, that most of the time they don't read that. So, you know, you're just trying to get the best sound you can in 20 minutes, and everybody in the band wants the best sound that they can get. Yeah. And you've got to get through each person, and there's 7 of us. Yeah. So it's, you know...
I'll tell you a wee story about that in a second from an audience member's perspective, but what do you think that is? Because to me it's analogous to the club that used to hire me for DJing but never uptook their DJ gear, and so I'd spend the first 40 minutes of my set actually trying to get it sounding nice, and I'd be all stressed out. So what is it at festivals? They've spent all this money on setting up the festival, blah, 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 blah. Why aren't they getting good sound people why aren't they getting really proficient sound technicians?
A lot of the time they do, and most of the time it's totally fine. And because I'm on the left of the stage, generally I'm usually by the monitor engineer, so I can just kind of go over and go more or less of that or whatever. Yeah. But if you take your own guy, he knows exactly what you want every show.
So it's not that they're not competent at their
Sometimes they
role.
Are.
I'll tell you my story in a sec. Go on.
I did one gig where we had a main student on monitors, and he was terrible. And then, you know, he disappeared about 10 minutes when we started playing. He was gone, and so I was trying to get things.
And then the thing is, like, from that creative point of view, I was talking about that it's called flow. I've read about it in a nerdy academic sense, but the nerdy academic sense doesn't tell you anything you don't know already about flow. As a musician, coming back to what you said, you can't relax on stage because you need to get into that groove. Yeah, and you know, and if you're,
I know that when I was in Dimmer and that, I didn't care as much because it wasn't my baby. It was like, you know, like. There's a certain joy to just being a musician in the band and not having that pressure of it being, you know, that worrying about
just playing big riffs, bro.
It's just good, man. That's why everyone else in the band is like, oh no, I thought it was cool, and it's like
so my bad sound story, and believe me, there are many of them, but my most recent one is. On and off over the years, actually this year I was really glad I went again because I really like it. I always thought it was a happy, dippy festival. I got really into WOMAD. Actually, I've seen you guys at WOMAD. Yeah. And I've never thought about the sound there before, obviously because every year I've gone, the sound's been good. Yeah. But this year's festival, and a lot of punters, if they don't know this stuff, they don't quite get why they're not really quite getting into it.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean? You're right. Anyway, so that big main stage with the lake in front of it and stuff, the 2 big main acts. You know how they had the big Sunday act and the big Friday act, whatever it is? Yeah. Both of them were pretty much ruined, in my opinion, by very, very poor engineering.
Similar problem at Laneway.
And the second part was coming back to me, because I go and do recce's and go, what's going on here? But I didn't do it on the main one. On that stage where I saw you guys play, where they have that VIP area that overlooks, you know, that side stage, not the main stage at WOMAD. You probably played so many places. Anyway,
I remember the gigs. I distinctly remember that gig.
Well, at that one, I don't know if you've heard of this guy called Kamasi Washington. He's like, right. So I was just like, that's the guy I'm going to see. Mm-hmm. And everything you've just described, I watched that band go through that. I could see them all going through that pain, but keeping a stage smile on. Right. And I could see these 2 they look like, not to be ageist, but sort of 17 or 18-year-old kids who were hired for the sound guys.
Yeah.
Just like totally out of their element.
Right.
And I don't know the weird. So it's just a wee anecdote about that, how it does really compromise something.
Similar situation for me, but is that I've in the last sort of few years seen bands where I've seen them having a great time on stage, but the sound coming out the front of house is terrible.
Ignorance is bliss. There's another cliche.
And a classic example, was this year at Laneway. Like Anderson Park and the internet sounded fucking terrible.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just me, because it was like a whole bunch of people came to see them, and the people I know and respect, and musicians, and were like, what's going on? Like, what? This sounds terrible. And it didn't matter where we kind of went to try and get closer to the...
So it wasn't wind, it was just shit engineering?
I don't know. There might have been... I don't want to blame the engineers, because I'm sure they would have brought their own front of house engineers, so why would they be bad? But, it was just this one stage at Laneway, but, I went to see other acts, Noah Slee and whatnot, and the sound was amazing. So
no, it's something that, from an audience perspective, it's one thing for some weird reason that always really pisses me off, because it's like you got to try and get that stuff as
there might have been a perfectly plausible reason for it. I had a similar thing with the Gorillaz.
Listen to me
with the Gorillaz.
I want what I deserve.
Well, I just, I know enough to know that, I'm not just going to say, it was terrible and somebody's just, responsible. There might have been some reason for it that was just out of their control.
I didn't say why I thought it was terrible at WOMAD, but my observation was that when I looked around, there were what looked like, since you mentioned it, something similar to main students, and everyone needs to get in there, totally. But there was no one overseeing, there was no main engineer. 50-year-old person
stepping in, boss man. You kind of know when you see them
standing at the back or whatever. There was no one overseeing. Yeah. Last thing on this, we are getting really boffiny with this. The other one I've noticed over the years, speaking of, not duty of care, but different approaches to engineering and so on, is, and a lot of hip hop acts particularly often don't tour with people like that. And I used to notice, going back to like rock talking about rock dinosaurs earlier in the podcast, a lot of old school engineers would just kind of set the turntables on a level, set the mics on a level, and kind of go and smoke a ciggy or eat a meal or something. There's kind of no approach to, and I've seen a lot of shows ruin like that, but that's changed now. It's changed a lot. It's like, it's just records and a couple of vocalists.
We do a lot of touring, overseas without. We never take a sound engineer. Not never. But the last couple of UK tours and that I've done, we just use in-house engineering. Yeah. But I kind of do my research and find out who they are and what experience
there's some great ones. I worked at the Prince of Wales in Melbourne, and the guy there, whatever style of music, I saw everything there from they're going to slip my mind. What did the guys from I saw everything from Queens of the Stone Age when they hadn't really blown up, to Frankie Knuckles. And this guy was just like, whatever it was, he was in there all afternoon. Really great. So sound engineers, I didn't mean to ostracize you from this podcast.
Yeah, no, I mean, and
there's some amazing.
Usually the ones
around.
that are kind of like in-house engineers at a club or whatever. Generally, they know that club so well. They get really good sound. So
moving away from. We'll get a bit away from boffinery, or at least all of you. You just mentioned the touring. It's something else I wanted to pick up on. So I read about Europe. I read about the US. How do you even start getting into those places, the US in particular? Because I've had a number of guests on who've talked about the proverbially cracking that market.
Yeah.
So how do you get a circuit going there, bro?
Well, it was all off the back of the album being popular, I think, over there. And...
but how did it get popular over there?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think so. This is pre-streaming days. We had a lot of success on Bandcamp. We were like, sort of poster boy or whatever you call it for, example from Bandcamp in its early days when it was still...
Really?
Yeah. Right. Because, I had I was sort of weekly in contact with Ethan Diamond, who's like the CEO of Bandcamp, who now I just, I've emailed him a couple of times, get, response back 6 months later, maybe, if you're lucky. But
from his PA, anyway.
Bandcamp just went massive. But we sold a lot on Bandcamp. A lot of downloads and a lot of physical copies. That album was massive on Bandcamp.
So Bandcamp is standalone pages, so you still have that tyranny of the internet, I don't know if that's the right expression, where people actually have to find you on Bandcamp. So was it that you were put on a featured page?
Bandcamp really got behind us,
Awesome. Yeah, great.
And they also, released Get It Together on vinyl under their BC Wax label and pressed that up in this limited edition copy with Dan Stills doing screen printed, silk print, screen printing and blue vinyl and everything, and so no, they were really supportive. And then there was just a few radio stations that picked up on it, and then I think through management managed to secure a booking agency, and that's kind of how you get into touring. You need a booking agent. But the problem for us with America was just like, we had to get visas for each band member, and I think they were around about $1,200 or $1,500 New Zealand or something per band member. Yeah. And we could only get them for sort of a 3-month period or something. So, if you wanted to go over twice a year, you had to do that twice. And if you've got, at the time we had 6 band members and then you've got flights. So before you've even left the country, you've spent sort of, $15,000 or whatever. And
you can see why the rise of the super DJ, right?
People and artists now.
One guy and a USB key.
One guy with a laptop and, I mean, which is fine if you can pull it off.
So with something like Bandcamp, I know you've got the booking agent, that's great, but when you go into, what do they call it? Like I just call it your admin. There's a tech nerd term for it. When you go into your admin section of your Bandcamp page, can you, let's say, for example, look at a map of the US and see where people have purchased the album or the EP?
No.
To have a sense of where to tour?
No.
Oh. So,
no.
So saying the USA
there was no heat.
Well, I asked that because saying the USA is like going to 100 different countries almost in a way. So how did you know where to go?
Well, we didn't. That's part of the reason why we got into debt. Was because we were kind of flying blind, and I guess I was too sort of naive a lot of the time. I mean, I'd turn up to places and go, we did gigs from like playing, what was it called? Levitt. I can't remember. A couple of pavilions. Levitt pavilions, maybe?
That sounds like a very big venue. You headline a pavilion.
There's Levitt. I think they're called Levitt pavilions, and they're owned by the Levitt family or whatever. And there's a bunch of them in the States, and there's like 2 in LA. We played at one in downtown LA, and we played at one in a more sort of glamorous part of LA, I can't remember. But so we had audiences of like sometimes sort of 3,000 or 4,000.
Really? Awesome.
And then we'd turn up to do shows with like 25 people or 50 people.
Not in a 4,000 people venue.
No. But there was kind of like there were times where it was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, what's the objective? What?
Yeah. That's what I mean. To me, it's like shooting. It's almost like shooting a dart at a map of America. If you don't have data on where you're.
Yeah, I mean, the booking agency will just kind of go, okay, well, yep, we'll sign you up. You want to do a tour? Okay, you're coming over then. We'll put a tour together for you. And unless management is kind of going, well, no, why are we playing there? And unless you've got a clear kind of strategy and like, because every tour I've done since I've had management has not lost money, and every tour I did prior to having management didn't lose money.
You go, what is causing this hemorrhaging?
Yeah, I mean, you could say that I should have been way more vigilant, and I should have been, but you can't.
No. Oh, yes, but you hand. That's the whole reason you hand that stuff on, to relieve your shoulders of it. You know.
Yeah. But I love touring, and I still do. Like when I say I don't really enjoy gigs.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, it's a separate thing to touring. I love touring. Yeah. I kind of let go. I don't care so much about like. Yeah.
You're like the dog sticking your head out the van window.
Yeah. Well, it's like it's you've only got one focus, which is just like the gig that day,
Yeah.
maybe some social media stuff around it or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's something really liberating about that. It's like a meditative thing where you're kind of just, it's like, running or whatever, where you can't really think too much because you're running. So
I only run
it's a similar thing with touring.
I only run if I'm being chased, but I hear what you're saying. And so with the media side of things, my little area of interest, I just thought of it now actually. So you're doing social media and stuff like that, but in this day and age, if you're in the States or Europe or wherever, is there still traditional media engagements? I guess things like college radio?
So I meant to come back to that.
Yeah,
so
you do that.
It's kind of all changed now as far as I can look at Spotify for artists and Shazam for artists and Songkick and Shazam. I already said that, didn't I? Was it?
No, you didn't.
Spotify, Shazam,
SoundCloud?
Songkick, and Pandora, and
Are we talking streaming?
we're talking all these platforms.
Yeah.
But they've got Spotify for artists where you can look in and see
What I was talking about.
exactly.
Analytics. That's the word I was looking for. Analytics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see the analytics. You can see the insights. You can see heat maps. You can see exactly where your audience is and what cities. What age group, what gender, everything. So
you do yourself, now that you manage it and you haven't lost money each tour, you find that stuff beneficial and helpful.
Yeah.
Because even if you know there's 80 heads somewhere in a small town overseas and somewhere else there is no heads.
Yeah, well, maybe there's no point in going to Manchester because there's nothing showing up on our insights that we've got an audience in Manchester. It's like, it's really big in London. And, certain other cities in the UK or whatever, but not, it's like, what's the point of going here unless we're trying to invest in something or unless... Like,
in London.
And this is all stuff that I've kind of, am more in touch with now because I'm managing myself.
Good, man. I think good on you. I think good on you for coming out the other end of what you described before, And I mean, from everything I've heard, don't. I can make no case for you to have management, Yeah.
I can still see the benefits of it totally, and I would love management, but it would have to be the right management.
What did you think when that it was some like chart act from memory, but it actually made a bit of media maybe a couple of years ago. The guy that was kind of blatantly and publicly outed for ripping off that artist, does that ring a bell? It was a New Zealand case.
Which one?
There was one that actually I thought there was one that actually he got roped over the coals in the media.
I think there's been a few.
Is it Ben Rumble or something? Is that the name of the artist? I don't know.
Dane Rumble
or something?
I'm not sure.
This is a shit story because I can't remember.
Yeah, no,
sorry.
But
I just thought, because everything I know from the industry over the years and conversations like this and stuff, I thought, that's really exposed to a wider audience what goes on, because it isn't an industry with a union, It's an industry, like you say, it's just starting to have like things like mental health, care available and so on and so forth. But, it's very unregulated area to get into, like a lot of creative exploits, particularly in New Zealand, I think,
Yeah.
Because I think there is I think there are kind of more entrenched unions or whatever, perhaps in the UK.
I'm not sure.
For performance.
Possibly.
So the shows, when you were overseas, sort of any particular memorable spots and places that you've played? What were the standout shows? How many times have you guys been to the States?
A
couple or three?
I think we went there 3 times.
And particular shows that you were just like besotted with?
Oh, one of those Levitt Pavilion ones was pretty amazing.
That's amazing.
Because they're really nice kind of, sound shell type.
Yeah. And that's
venues.
That's a big crowd for a Kiwi band in America, man.
Yeah.
Where do you go in Europe? London?
Well, we don't have a booking agent in Europe at the moment, so that's why I've just been going to the UK because we had a booking agent there. I'd love to get back into Europe, but it's a tricky thing when you're just me being the manager and the music maker and trying to just hustle all those deals and find the right booking agent and all of that is and it being a dad of 2 kids, it's just
How's that been, Andrew, in terms of, talking the sort of darker ends of the arts we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, and you saying you come out of a lot of things, has having a family been a good influence on? Yeah.
I mean,
how old are your kids?
6 and 9.
Yeah. So you've had 9 years practice. Do you still feel like you've got any idea what you're doing? I can't imagine being a parent, because, it's like...
Oh, I mean, I was
going to say there isn't a book, but there kind of is now. There's
lots of books, but I've never read any. I know my partner has, but I don't think anyone... I don't know if any of them are helpful. You just kind of wing it, you just have to, but...
Just got to be around and...
I guess the thing I've learned, and that's the weird thing about depression and anxiety and all that is if people were to ask me, I wouldn't take it back, because...
certainly gives you perspective and character building and...
Yeah, and I've just learned to, apart from sort of manage my own shit, to just sort of, take the time to spend just hanging out with your kids, or... Yeah. I mean, I still to this day now, which I never would have done before, I'll just, if one of my kids is having a bit of a bad day or sick or whatever, I'll just say, should we just kick it on the couch and watch a movie? I mean, I would just, in the past, gone, you can watch a movie and I'll go down to the studio, or I'll be on the computer doing this or that.
Yeah.
I just kind of learned to sort of say no to things and just go, you know what, I just...
I think we've come from, and certainly not all. There's a number of, there's always been great fathers around, but again, going back to changing societal patterns and stuff, there's been a good few hundreds of years of absent dads in one way or another. I know what you mean. There's kind of two parents being more connected is a lot more common now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, what for me, speaking of sort of head problems through life, mental health, anxiety, whatever you call it. I'm not so much of an anxiety guy, but I've been through things. For me, yes, more of a connection to family and so on. But I have found also that the exact point I want to get you, you're making that you wouldn't take back any of it. I think what's been really good for me is it's dissolved a lot of my ego.
Yeah,
it's made me. How do I explain that? A lot more on it. Feel like I'm on a level with other people. Not kind of grandiose. I'm a lot more humbled, but it's actually what I get back from that has been really good for me, because I would have initially seen that as, I've lost all my confidence. It's like, no, you haven't. You're actually way more grounded. You've lost all your peacock feathers.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
I mean, you don't strike me as that sort of personality to begin with. We all have our unique situations. That's unique to me.
Yeah,
that's what's changed it for me.
Definitely, depression, anxiety definitely knocks your confidence out, and it's.
But it builds something else.
But then it comes back. The confidence comes back. And then it might go again, but
built differently. What I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
But maybe that's maturity as well. Actually, I think I'm talking about the difference between being 21 and 41.
Yeah, I mean, in the early days of Solar Rosa, I definitely, when things started sort of taking off, there was definitely some ego there and some bravado and kind of,
I just also realised we've got to factor age into that age now.
Age is part of it too.
Yeah. Absolutely. And things that relax me, sounding like a John Kerwin ad for mental health. Good for the Kiwi bloke when he came out. And
he's my second cousin.
Depression.
So.
I'm not going to diss him. I was just saying it's good. It's good for mental health.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
Second cousin. Has he been to one of your shows?
Don't think so. No.
I was going to say, on one of his advertisements or PSAs, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
He talked about something I'd already discovered, and that's his, being an active relaxer, which is what I am.
Yep.
And he related it to cooking, and then I PM'd you a recipe the other day because I just guessed, based on the level of steps in your cooking, that you, like me, seems like you like to spend quite a long time in the kitchen.
I don't necessarily like. I mean, I like. I like cooking. I do enjoy cooking.
Was that recipe I sent you? Was there too many steps in that? Because that's quite a long process.
Not necessarily, no. No, because I'm used to cooking Indian and
that's beautiful.
And it's massive list of ingredients.
So you don't sort of chill out in the kitchen, but you do like making good food.
Yeah, I like making food. Yeah. But it's not. I wouldn't say that's my active relaxing kind of therapy. probably more just kicking it on the couch and having a beer or wine or whatever.
That's not active.
And sitting with the kids active, yeah.
Anyway,
True.
no, that's so
exercise maybe.
So food,
I don't know.
So there you go. As I say, I'm not one to run. I do ride the bike though.
So
food wise, Indian,
Mexican's my thing.
I need to learn more about preparing and cooking Mexican. I do like. There's some good Mexican places to eat out here now, compared to like that kind of cheesy,
Yeah,
American Mexican. You know, that American Mexican compared to Mexican.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's all right. I tell you what's good to get is Rick Stein's book Mexico. If you want to just do some Mexican cooking, just get that. There's some really great recipes in there. And some of them very authentic. Some of them more kind of Southern American, but just still kind of classy dishes. And a lot of that stuff you can. It's turning into like a food podcast you can order.
Folks, he doesn't know, folks.
There's a place in Dunedin that you can order tomatillos and all sorts of dried chilies and everything. They import all this Mexican goods and stuff. So,
but a lot of the spices and stuff I've found, if you go to any good Indian bulk place, there's stuff that's used in Mexican. There's a bit of crossover.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there's just things like ancho chilies and things that you can't really get anywhere unless you.
There was something I found hard to find last time I cooked something vaguely Mexican, and it's so common I can't forget the name of them. They're little chilies that come in a can.
Jalapenos?
No, not jalapenos.
Chipotle?
Yeah, I found not the best ones in the supermarket. I'd like to find better. Yeah. Are you someone who'll go to a number of spots to get what you need? Like I go to the bulk food place behind
Mount Eden,
the one on Sandringham Road. Yeah, behind the burger that burger chain place, Wendy's.
Yeah.
Oh,
they've got quite a good Mexican selection there.
Those deal bags of spice.
Yeah.
But people who buy spice from the supermarket, man, forget about it.
It's just a convenience thing, I think, a lot of the time. But yeah, the place is good.
One of these.
Yeah.
Hold spices. If I just reach back here, you'll see these alphabeticized.
we're like that at home.
Containers. Yeah, thank you. And what other items do you swear by? I bought a. I don't know if you remember Tim Adam.
Yeah.
But we PM each other about food quite a lot online, and he told me to buy a real heavy skillet.
Yeah.
For just general cooking, the really heavy iron frying pans.
Yeah.
Do you have one of those?
I do, yeah.
They're very good.
Le Creuset and stuff like that.
$20 from Bunnings or not from somewhere like that. Briscoe's. Haven't looked back with that.
Yep.
Slow cooker? You got a slow cooker?
Yep.
Yeah. What else do you swear by?
In fact, I should send you. I've got a really great slow cooker, a black bean ragu, which is
I do that,
which is a good Mexican sort of recipe.
Do send me Mexican recipes. Good knife.
What else? I mean, we cook all sorts. We kind of like we like cooking Thai, Vietnamese, Indian, Mexican, Japanese.
Wow, you actually sound far more global than me. Yeah, I can't say I really cook Vietnamese.
And then burgers and stuff as well. But
what's Vietnamese? To me, I think the only Vietnamese thing I've made is like a cold vermicelli noodle kind of salad.
Usually make it in summertime, yeah. Like
with the bits of meatballs in it.
When you can go to the Avondale markets and get you can get Thai basil, you can get lemongrass, and you can get Vietnamese mint and all that stuff. You can get it. Just buy like $1 for a big. You can make for a big bunch, and you can just make really delicious kind of Vietnamese salads.
Yum. So I'm on the right lines, like kind of noodly cold salads, and
Yep.
Yeah.
Limes are not great. That's the thing that really annoys me.
Limes
being in New Zealand is that limes are like a winter fruit. So
I wonder if they'd freeze.
And you kind of want do. You can freeze the juice,
bro. When I was running a bar in Melbourne with a friend, we'd build quite sort of flash cocktails, bro. But a lot of them involved a lot of lime chunks.
Yeah.
And then I sort of started doing the ordering during the day. Speaking of overspending, and I think limes were working out at the dirtiest time of the year to like $60 a tray delivered.
Yeah.
I ended up having to say to the staff, you're actually putting $3 or $4 worth of limes.
Yeah, $35 a kilo. Like when in the sort of middle of summer, they get up to $35 a kilo. So you could buy one lime for like about $4 or $5.
You reckon that's what I mean? And if you think about a highball glass,
Yeah.
And some bartender who,
Arano used to make, because, I was in hospital for years, you used to be able to, I was working in bars and you'd order, it'd come like a milk crate or whatever, and you'd get your orange juices and your grapefruit juices and all the tomato juice and all that, but they'd also do like litres of lime juice.
Yeah.
And you could get them all year round, and I don't think...
But look, visually...
But the actual limes themselves, I know, yeah.
Where did you work, bro? Where did you work over the years?
Verona, and Alleluia and St. Kevin's Arcade. Like, it's a real K Road kind of thing.
Alleluia, yep.
And another place, I sort of bar managed a couple of places. I can't even remember the names of now. That was sort of like really fleeting. But the main one was, Alleluia and Verona.
So with that, it reminds me of another... Oh, these segues, they're fantastic. This reminds me of another thing I was going to ask, is... Because you're at a hospital now, you've got a family. I don't mean figures and all the rest of it. It's kind of bad taste and unexpected anyway, but how do you make a band, an indie band, sustain a family when you're not touring or releasing and albums don't sell and stuff now? Is that your what I mean is that your main kind of gig income wise now?
No, it's like it's one of those things with Solar Rosa that, like, if you took one element out, it'd be a real struggle for me to exist. So, but the main... I don't
know what you mean by one element.
Well, if you took away gigging, if you took away,
or
if you took away publishing, in fact, those are really the two that kind of keep it afloat.
Been on any sweet TV shows where you get a check every...
Yeah, well, that's like I say. That's what keeps me afloat. Really, is I get a lot of sort of a lot of syncs in the US and some in Europe.
A lot of what? Sorry,
syncs, TV syncs. Yeah. So I've had music on.
Is that like the technical term for getting a tune on a show or whatever?
Yeah. So but I've had like Mob Wives and. There's a Netflix show called Atypical, track on that, and I can't even remember the names, but quite a few TV shows in the States. Yeah.
And is it like anything else? Like I used to have an agent for voice work. Is there someone? There's obviously an agent in the States.
As a publisher, yeah.
A publisher, of course, it's a publisher.
Yeah.
I also saw that guy. I didn't realise that. I don't know if you watched... Did you go through the Mad Men phase like everyone else?
Yep.
Yeah, so I didn't realise that was actually a beat that a guy had rapped over, the intro theme.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like actually it's a beat maker you and I would know.
Right.
Made that beat.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, ooh, what a nice break for him, man. Because he's like he's not trying to be...
Yeah, I mean,
he's not trying to be Dre or whatever, but he's got this great...
Yeah.
Beat on it. Well, actually,
sounds very David Holmesy, actually, that track.
When I say beat, I think that the version on the theme is without the beat. It's just the melody.
Yeah.
But there's actually one with you can hear it with a beat, right? With someone rapping.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Wonder what something like just those one-offs. I've listened to podcasts where guys like comedians I listen to have done like all this stuff in their career, and they've done this and that, and they've tried to do a pilot for a sitcom, and this is blah 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 blah, and then they have like one part in a movie, like The Hangover or whatever, just a one short walk-on role, and that residual has kind of got them, got them through a lot of years. I wonder what something like Savage would have got for being on Knocked Up. That'd have to be a big one, right? That was a big main tune on that.
Yeah, I mean, movies are the dream, that's if you get something on a movie, it's... I mean, I've only ever had something on an indie movie, and so the paycheck wasn't actually that good. But if you get a major motion picture, I imagine the fee's pretty good. The biggest one I've ever had, I think, was like a TV commercial in Canada for like Molson's beer.
Last question on that. When I've done stuff, like I say, with the voice work, you don't get ongoing payments in New Zealand, or at least you didn't 20 years ago when I was doing it. So with that ad in Canada, do you, if it keeps playing, do you keep seeing something from it?
I guess you would rollover, yeah, but there was no rollover with that. I think it just went on for a period and then it was done.
It's shit that you don't get that here.
Well, you would. No, you would. I think if they keep, like for example, classic example would be Pack and Save using is it Counting the Beat, or it's that Swingers song?
Oh, that song has been used on Hallenstein's.
Yeah. But I think Pack and Save they'll have an exclusive license for that now.
Yeah.
Because that's their theme song kind of thing. So he would get rollover for that.
Absolutely. Interesting.
Yeah.
I've told a story, I think, on the podcast before where when I was doing that voice work quite regularly, there was a guy that was the voice of Telecom back then in the 90s. Story told unlimited times all over the world. But he was not only the voice of their advertising, I think, at the time, but he was also the voice of when you'd call things like the answering phone service or whatever. Like he was the voice.
Yeah.
So, but he'd moved to Australia. So they'd actually, they'd have to fly him back for the day to Wellington every time they needed stuff updated, because to Telecom that's nothing.
Yep.
But he's just a hugely they can't just go change.
Well, it's like the Briscoes.
Change the voice.
It's like the Briscoes woman. I mean,
do a tune with her, bro.
She'd be under exclusive license too. I mean, she probably can't work for anybody else but Briscoes, but she would be paid well for that, I'm sure.
I cut you off about asking what else you do to keep it all moving on, but that's cool. We'll finish up. You've been really honest and insightful, and
we can keep talking if you want to keep talking.
I love.
We can wrap it up.
I just love chatting to people and seeing what comes of it. It's
man.
I never know what part of people's stories I'm going to get. So, in the scheme of things, you're feeling healthy and productive and good now.
Yeah, I mean, winter's never a great time for me.
Nope.
Like productively, I don't like being in the studio that much. Funnily enough, I've kind of learnt to discover that my most enjoyable time being in the studio in winter is in the weekend when the family's home. Like for some reason, I like activity in the house.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty lonely existence in wintertime when you kind of, because I'm in the basement kind of studio. I just summer's my kind of productive
time. Well, like I said to you, I always give advice that I should heed, but when just make sure you get out and connect with people when you're doing that for a spell.
Yeah. I mean that's the good thing about. I'm usually doing gigs or traveling somewhere. I'm kind of like fortunate enough to sort of be off to Bali next month to do a gig, and then in September going to the UK to do some collaborations in a London show, and then on a holiday in Spain after that. So. Fortunately, I do get out, but yeah, it is. I guess I'm a bit of an introvert, but I still like this social aspect of life. So it is important.
An introvert who's just given us 80 minutes of fascinating convo. So my advice for now, bro, to get off to Bali is just chill on the couch with the kids and enjoy life. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Nice speaking.
Thanks, man.